We have about 15 minutes to talk about the future of one of the great journalism brands in the world today, the New York Times. And to do that, I'm going to invite Michael Zimbalist to the stage. Michael is head of our R&D unit.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So Michael, have a seat. The Times classically was a newspaper that sold advertising in the marketplace, in the print marketplace, and today it's very much a multi-platform brand. Global, the Times just folded the IHT brand into its parent brand. So talk about what this might mean for the future of the company, the future of how its products are made.
Sure. So the move from one channel to multi-channel was, at first fairly easily traversed. I mean, you were the guy who did it, who brought them from print to a website, and that felt pretty orderly. And now we're seeing that move even more faster to multi-channel. But what we've learned, I guess, is that the relationship with our customer has moved with it.
Which customer? Hello? Put the mic on. Thank you. Which customer?
Our reader.
Our reader.
So
okay.
Principally, yeah, we have two customers. Fair enough. But our reader has migrated with us to all these different platforms, and our reader's behavior has changed, and we're maybe keeping up with the reader a little bit. Now the reader's leading just a little bit more and maybe we're keeping up, but we're trying to stay neck and neck and nose and nose with the reader, and they're following us. So the principal model is really the customer has a loyalty to this brand wherever it might be, and will be wherever the customer is, and so the model has sort of shifted a little bit more toward the customer, the reader, than the advertiser in that respect.
Right. So as the model has shifted toward the reader, I think in many of these places the revenue streams have similarly shifted to the reader. So about 5 or maybe a little longer than that years ago, 80% of the business was subsidized by advertising. Today, in 2013, the Times expects it to be at around 50-50, maybe even a little less than that.
Right.
Where does it go over time, in your view? Does it top out at 50-50? Is it a,
So this last quarter, I think, was the first quarter that revenue from consumers, subscription revenue, overtook advertising revenue after 160 years. That was the first time that happened. It was kind of a watershed quarter. And the pressures on the advertising marketplace remain pretty strong. How long that shift continues and whether it stabilizes is sort of anybody's guess. But I do believe that as we evolve the way we sell advertising in this fragmented consumer experience that we're all having now with the brand, it will strengthen a little bit more. So I don't know that's 50-50, 60-40. I don't know what it is.
Let's talk about this so-called fragmented consumer experience. So, as you started to say, the brand went from print to web. Obviously, around 2000, 2001, it began to go into the mobile space. I think today, mobile actually is the fastest growing use case. Where does it go from here? I mean, you're running R&D. What are some of the distribution channels that you see the brand being sort of nascent in now?
Right. So one of the really interesting things that we've been investigating in the R&D lab is all the different opportunities for content to find its way into occasions that have heretofore been sort of devoid of content. So as the Internet of Things takes hold, we'll start to see every object be a smart connected object, which means every object can just be a media distribution platform. So I mean, we're envisioning scenarios where, much like every room in your house and every object in every room in your house is addressable and can be very specifically targeted by the right content. And I think that's like a potential opportunity.
Give an example.
Sure. So let's say your refrigerator has a screen on it, which it already does, or your refrigerator just doesn't even need a screen because it's got a layer of LEDs just right on the surface, and that can be lit up, and it can be lit up with just the right kind of information, nutritional information, recipes. And you can imagine a scenario where now, as we have a subscription business, where that subscription business stratifies and objects subscribe to whatever feeds or channels we make available. So we've designed, say, for real in the R&D lab, a bathroom mirror that will contextualize your biometric information with articles about your health.
So have you done anything with Google Glass?
Yeah. So the Times, we released a Google Glass app, which will give you alerts and read you stories. And then we're experimenting in the lab with other Google Glass apps that would be much more location-based. So as you move around a city, you would get sort of a Timesian gloss on the city. So you can imagine that, we have the best journalists, we're doing the best content production. Why couldn't we do a gloss on, Rome that you would wear and experience as you move around Rome, sort of the Times' layer on top of Rome.
So let's shift the conversation a little bit now from all of this fragmentation, all of these new channels, all of this media fragmentation to the user side. So the Times classically has been one of the great influential brands in the world. Even in the 1960s, Teddy White wrote in The Making of the President that a person in Washington, Boston, and New York, which is essentially where the paper was distributed back then, would all be essentially reading the New York Times at the same time in the morning. And now, in a fragmented world, that's changed dramatically. But, on the other hand, it's now a globalized brand. People are reading it all over the world. There are tens of millions of users, and a lot of people are now paying for the service. And so in that context, it seems to me that the same notion of influentials is true. In other words, the brand attracts a certain kind of person, and that kind of person can be valuable both to advertisers and to one another as a kind of network in and of itself. How has the Times, if it has at all, really lit up that network? In other words, it's a one-way, traditionally a one-way service, but composed of millions of people who share a kind of sensibility about the world.
Right. The influential audience, we think, is bar none, and has remained that way. They're experiencing the product a little bit differently, but they're also now empowered to become distributors of the product, as you say, through these social channels where we see Times stories shared every couple of seconds and Times links traversing Twitter every couple of seconds.
This is really annoying. Is the Times the most shared Twitter brand? Do you know?
I can't answer that. I think The Guardian put out a ranking list. Somebody here probably knows like what the top, I think it's in the top 2 or 3 if it's not number 1. But you ask about how do we light up a network of influentials, which is a really interesting question. And we've been watching the pools of influencers as they share links and characterizing different pools of influencers, because when we have such a broad spectrum of content that we produce that you see the influencers in food and health are different than the influencers in politics, but then there's some super influencers who cross over. One of the things that we've done is by analyzing which stories have the most velocity inside of social media, we've been able to actually create a product that lets advertisers take advantage of that by targeting only those stories that are now seeing great velocity through sharing. So that's one sort of example.
I got it. So talk a little bit about the globalization side. Is that something that you think stays only in English language, or is there some? I noticed, for example, that Jonah Peretti was crowdsourcing translations of BuzzFeed. I mean, can you see that happening at the Times?
I don't see crowdsourced translations in the near term. I mean, we have experimented with translated editions and do put out translated editions, but we've looked at the output of machine translation, and it just doesn't meet the quality standards just yet. I mean, I think at some point it'll get there. Crowdsourcing translations of BuzzFeed listicles will only make them more appealing through the errors that are generated in the process, I can imagine. But I don't think crowdsourcing, an article about kind of the 11th hour debt ceiling negotiations would necessarily serve us or the readers or, society overall.
Okay, so we have about 2 minutes left, and I know we haven't been doing this morning, but I want to do it. Does anyone have any questions? A quick question for me or Michael about the Times, the advertising side of it? I can continue to go down the road with him, but I'm happy to walk out and take any questions that anybody might have. Is that Linda? Is it? No? Oh, okay. Yep.
Martin's going.
There you go. Hey, how are you? Nice to see you.
Good to see you. Hey there. I'm particularly interested in the youth sort of group, millennials, and I'm interested in millennials specifically, and I don't know if you saw that Pew research about their kind of disengagement with traditional news. So I was wondering if you're designing any programs or initiatives to sort of meet them where they are, if it's not BuzzFeed, but sort of anticipate this group that's coming up.
That is a great question. Michael, do you want to take that? That is a great question. We've talked about that. We know that there's this historical precedent for people to come into the Times brand in their late 30s, early 40s, and we still see that. I mean, we still see, particularly in our digital and mobile products, a skew toward a younger audience. We're thinking. Let me answer the question this way. I don't think we're thinking about it as a demographically targeted approach, but it's a consumption-targeted approach that you're going to start to see from us in some new products, which acknowledges that there's a lot more grazing, a lot more speed, a lot more emphasis on the now and what's happening now. And I think that naturally that kind of product will flow toward this new millennial news behavior.
All right, thanks. We're out of time, so I want to thank Michael Zimbalist. Thanks so much.